Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Ever feel like your own thoughts and emotions are kind of running the show sometimes?
Oh, definitely. It's a very common feeling.
Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating perspective on that exact solution. It comes from a teaching by Duto Terrakin. Did it given back in September 2022.
And what's really interesting about this teaching, I think, is it's almost a counterintuitive take on finding inner freedom.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about achieving that perfectly still, quiet, peaceful mind like we often picture, you know?
Exactly. Like, forget the image of the super serene monk on a mountaintop with literally zero thoughts happening.
Right.
The core insight here, the thing we want to unpack, is that real liberation, the ability to not be constantly tossed around by our inner world, it actually comes from a slightly surprising place.
Which is,
It's our capacity to simply see and understand what's going on inside us. The thoughts, the feelings, the whole shebang, just seeing it.
okay, so the mission for our deep dive today is really to explore that idea. How does cultivating this ability to see our inner landscape, to just observe it without getting all tangled up in judgment, how does that actually unlock a greater sense of freedom?
Right. So let's start with that common idea about meditation. Lots of people think the main goal is like to shut down the mental chatter, right? To somehow force our emotions into hiding, push them down, and then you reach this blissful state of total quiet.
Yeah, that's definitely the popular understanding. And Paniki kind of addresses this head on. He suggests that, while that kind of forced peace might feel pleasant for a bit,
Sure.
there's something actually much more valuable to be gained. It's not really about stifling or suppressing what's happening inside.
Okay, so this something more valuable. That's this skill of seeing the thoughts and emotions. What does that actually mean, though? It sounds a bit more involved than just, noticing them.
That's a great point. Think of seeing as observing your thoughts and emotions, but without getting sort of swept away by them.
Oh.
It's acknowledging, there's a thought, or, okay, feeling sad right now, but without immediately reacting to it or judging it as good or bad.
Like watching clouds.
Exactly like watching clouds drift by. You see them, you acknowledge they're there, but you don't try to grab onto one or push another one away. This ability to just observe without attachment, that's the key to liberation he's talking about.
So it's less about trying to, eliminate the inner noise and more about changing our relationship to it.
Precisely.
Taking a step back, becoming the observer instead of being right in the middle of the storm.
Yeah, it allows us to gain freedom from our thoughts and emotions rather than just being constantly dictated by them. Think of it like watching a play on a stage. When you're seeing your inner world like this, you're essentially sitting in the audience. You're observing the actors, your thoughts, your feelings, and the plot, your internal story. You're not suddenly jumping on stage and becoming one of the characters caught up in all the drama.
That's a really helpful image. Okay, so the teaching then moves into this idea of thoughts as either masters or servants. That part really struck me.
It's a powerful metaphor, isn't it? Consider this. If we're just completely unaware of our thoughts, they basically take charge.
Yeah.
They influence our moods, they drive our reactions, they shape our beliefs, and often we don't even realize it's happening. We're like puppets, really, dancing to their tune.
But if we are aware, if we cultivate that seeing,
Then we can step into a different role entirely. We can become the one who directs them, deciding which thoughts are useful to engage with right now and which ones we can just let pass on by. That analogy he uses, thoughts are good servants but terrible masters, it's just so spot on. When we consciously use our thinking, say, to solve a problem at work or figure out a life challenge or even explore spiritual ideas,
yeah, they're useful then.
they're incredibly useful tools. They serve us well.
But when they take over,
Uh-oh.
that's when things can really go sideways. The teaching mentioned things like sleepless nights, big arguments, even violence. How does that connection work? How do thoughts lead there?
Well, think about how many arguments, big or small, come from people just clinging so tightly to their own beliefs, their own thoughts about how things absolutely must be.
Right. My way or the highway thinking.
Exactly. If we're not aware that these are just thoughts, just mental interpretations, we can get so attached, so identified with them that we feel this intense need to defend them fiercely. And that's where conflict comes from. It's like we are our thoughts.
And it's not just the thinking part, is it? Our emotions can be just as much in the driver's seat if we're not paying attention.
Oh, absolutely. The teaching makes that parallel very clearly. Unacknowledged emotions, unseen emotions, they can totally enslave us. They dictate our behavior, color our entire experience of the world.
The examples given were just so vivid. Like sadness, how it can almost trick us, convince us that holding on to it means we love someone more, or that letting it go means we don't care enough. That's such a common trap.
It really is. It shows how emotions can weave these little stories, these narratives, just to keep themselves going.
Yeah.
And this can create these awful cycles of suffering and potentially, deepen into more serious things like depression, as the teaching mentioned.
And anger, too. That feeling of being totally righteous, that fuels the urge to tell everyone else off, to correct them.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like these emotions have their own little survival instinct.
Right.
They actively look for reasons, for justifications, for evidence to support why they should exist and why they're right. And the really crucial point here is that without being aware of these thoughts and emotions pulling the strings, we end up inadvertently creating the very suffering we say we want to escape. We actually block the peace we're looking for.
Okay, so if trying to just, squash these thoughts and feelings, if suppression isn't the answer, how do we actually cultivate this ability to see them? What's the practical approach here?
Right, and this is where it might feel a bit paradoxical at first. The path to seeing isn't about trying to control them or get rid of them. Instead, it actually involves allowing them to arise, giving them space to just be there without immediately reacting or getting totally carried away by their story.
Huh. That sounds almost backward. Because when a strong feeling like, anxiety or frustration pops up, my first instinct is usually to either shove it down or immediately try to distract myself.
That's the normal, deeply ingrained habit for most of us, and the teaching absolutely acknowledges that initially this whole seeing thing can feel really difficult.
Yeah, I bet.
When a really powerful thought or emotion arises, it often feels like it just instantly takes over. We become the anger. We become the worry. There's zero sense of separation.
But the idea is that with practice, with consistent practice of just observing, that starts to change.
Exactly that. Through regularly and gently just witnessing whatever comes up without judging it, we gradually develop the capacity to recognize thoughts and emotions more quickly.
Right.
And with more clarity.
Like training a muscle.
It's exactly like training a muscle. The more you practice just observing, the stronger that ability becomes.
Okay, so as we get better at this seeing, what's the payoff? How does that actually change our experience?
Well, the really significant change is that these thoughts and emotions start to lose their power to define us, to control us. The very moment we recognize them, there's that worry again, or okay, anger is here, the moment we acknowledge their presence without getting tangled up in their narrative. Their intensity often starts to diminish. Their grip just loosens.
So the act of observing itself creates a kind of distance, a space that weakens their hold on us. That's actually a profound idea, and surprisingly simple in a way.
It truly is. And the teaching really emphasizes that this ability, this newfound capacity to be independent of our thoughts and emotions, to not be completely defined or ruled by them, that is a profoundly liberating realization. That's where true any freedom is found.
Wow. Okay, so just to kind of wrap up the core idea here.
Yeah.
The key takeaway isn't about striving for some perfectly blank, always peaceful mind through meditation.
Yeah.
It's more about cultivating this sharp, almost mindful ability to see our thoughts and emotions as they appear without judging them and, crucially, without that immediate urge to suppress or fight them.
And the really empowering message, I think, for you listening is that by developing this awareness, this skill of observation, you can gradually shift. You can move from being controlled by all that inner turmoil to becoming the calm observer and ultimately, as the teaching suggests, maybe even the master of your own mind.
That really is a transformative perspective. Okay, so for our final reflection today, maybe just bring to mind a moment, perhaps even just in the last few hours, when a strong thought or strong emotion surfaced within you. Could you have paused, maybe just for a fleeting second, and simply observed it without immediately getting swept away? What subtle shifts might you have noticed just in that brief space of observation? It's a small exercise, but maybe one that could open up a whole new way of relating to your own inner world.